Any denial of our good is not loving ourselves, and we can do that in so many different ways. You know, I once had a client who wore glasses and often wore contact lenses, and we weren't even working to improve her vision, but we were working to release some old pattern in her life that was really limiting her. And one day we had a big breakthrough, and the next day when she got up and she put on her contact lenses, they were bothering her. So she took them out, and her vision was absolutely clear. She could see everything perfectly. And she spent the whole day saying, "I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it." And the next day, she was back to wearing her lenses. You see, the universe will back up whatever we say. And when good comes into our life and we deny it, this is an act of not loving ourselves. And we literally push it away. Sometimes we have a partner who's tired or grouchy, and we think that something's wrong with us. Or our marriage ends, and we believe it's all our fault, and that we're not good enough. Or we have one or two dates with somebody and they never call again, and again we think something is wrong with us. Sometimes we're afraid to ask for a raise, or our bodies may not match the latest fashions, and we think we're not good enough. Or we don't make the sale, or we don't get the part, and we think we're not good enough. Or we may have a fear of intimacy, and so we wind up having no sex or anonymous sex. How do you express your lack of self-esteem? Think about it. It's not that we're wrong or bad people. It's just that we're looking at what we'd like to change. And we all have things about us that could be changed if we want to make our lives work better. When we were little tiny babies, we knew the perfection of our being. We knew how wonderful we were. You look at any tiny baby and you see how wonderful they are. They're full of love and they're full of life, and they ask for what they want, and they express their feelings freely. When a little baby is angry, not only do you know it, the entire neighborhood knows it. And yet, 2 minutes later, their smile can light up a room because they express and it's over. And they always live in the now. And they reach out and ask for what they want. They're fabulous little babies. And they love their bodies from the top of their head all the way to the tip of their toes. They have no shame and no guilt. And they're not into comparison. And each one of us was like that. Then somewhere along the line we lost it. We listened to other frightened or angry people and believed what they told us. Where did you lose your love for yourself? All right, what I'd like you to do now is to pick up your hand mirror, and I want you to look into your own eyes and say, "I love and accept you exactly as you are." I want you to do this now. Go ahead. I love and accept you exactly as you are. Just notice your reactions. How do you react to doing this? How do you feel? What's coming up? Is it an easy exercise to do? Do you feel foolish? Does it seem hard to do? Does it make you feel angry? What sort of reactions are you having? I can remember when I used to criticize myself all the time when I looked in the mirror. I remember the endless hours I used to spend plucking my eyebrows to make myself barely acceptable. And I also remember I used to be frightened to look into my own eyes. Are you like that? Is this a difficult exercise? Because to me, this is one of our core issues, how we feel about ourselves. It's not important what's happening out there. It's not the size of our hips or our bank account or the fact that we have a lover or not, but how we feel about ourselves. Loving the self, to me, is the most important thing we can do. And this begins, as I said before, with no criticism. Do you criticize yourself? Oh, I've heard all the answers. Well, of course. I mean, how am I going to change if I don't? Well, if I don't do that, I won't be able to motivate myself. Doesn't everyone? Or I've always criticized myself. Well, we're not talking about everyone. We're talking about you. Everybody has their own answers and their own reasons. Why do you criticize yourself? What's wrong with you? In fact, at this point, I'd like you to stop and give yourself a little time to think and make a list of all the things that you think are wrong with you. And when you finish that, come back and we'll go on. Make a list of all the things you think are wrong with you. You will get the most out of this tape and the work we do if you allow yourself to take the time to do the exercises between the explanations. Now, let's talk about your list. Think about your list. Is it full of too short, too tall, too young, too old, too stupid, whatever? It always seems to be a lot of twos. And look at this list and notice, does it go with your should list? Are the items pretty much the same? See, it sounds to me like you're saying, I'm not good enough. And here we are again at the very bottom line, not loving ourselves. And this, to me, is the only real problem we have. Now, the next question is, where does this come from? Where do we get those ideas? How did we go from the perfection of a tiny baby who knew how wonderful it was to the feeling of being unlovable and unworthy and not good enough? You know, I like to think of us all as being like a rose. If you think of this flower, this gorgeous rose, from the time it is the tiniest little bud, as the petals begin to open, till it becomes a full blossom, till the last petal falls, a rose is always beautiful, always perfect, and ever-changing. And this is the way we are. We are always perfect wherever we are in life. And we want to see ourselves that way in the here and now. Yes, of course there are things we want to change. We all have things we want to alter in our lives. But it doesn't mean that we're bad people. We don't have to come from a space of being wrong. So in order to release ourselves from the belief we have about ourselves that are limiting, we want to examine the past. We want to see what these blocks are. If we don't see them, there's no way we can remove them. So we look and we see what they are. What are the beliefs? What are the concepts? What are the ideas that are limiting us? And then we remove them. To me, it's rather like mental house cleaning. All of us have to clean house periodically. Some of us do it more often than others. But there comes a time when you really must clean the house, or it becomes impossible to live in. And I think it's the same thing with our mental houses. We need to periodically go through and do some house cleaning and toss out the old rubbish or the things that no longer suit us or no longer fit us. And we want to polish up those ideas that are positive and good and that nourish us and use them more often. You know, it really can be almost as easy as scraping bits of food off a plate into the trash after a meal. Now, you wouldn't go into yesterday's garbage to make tonight's meal. But how often do we go into yesterday's mental garbage to create tomorrow's experiences? The next exercise I'd like you to do is make a list of all the things your parents said were wrong with you. All the negative messages you got. Again, turn the tape off and give yourself a bit of time to really let things come up. Things that were said or implied about your body, things that were said about your abilities, things that were said about love and money and your creative talents and things like that. And of course, I know that your parents